friends. It's another episode of Beanie Bits with me, Sabine Mann. Today I want to talk about your story is not yours to keep. Lisa Nichols said that, and when I took one of her classes a long time ago, it just stuck with me. It's like, what do you mean my story is not mine to keep? The thing is, stories are as old as time. As long as humans have been around, we have stories. Stories, they share our traditions. They share our way of lives. They just share so much, and when we hear a story, we hear somebody's either the heartache and the joy when they overcame whatever broke them, almost broke them or didn't break them, or sometimes it's a story just to make us laugh, to make us smile, to forget of our worries for a minute, and I have so many people, it's like, I don't have a story. I'm like, yeah, you do. Everybody has a story. And then, some people is like, but I don't have a hardship story. I said, great, share it. Share it. People need to hear that too. It doesn't always have to be a hardship story. It doesn't always have to be it's like going down in the dip and then coming back out story. It doesn't have to be that way. For most of us, that's how it is, but it's not for everybody. And that's okay. Somebody else needs to hear that, to encourage them, to motivate them, to give them hope. So, and to me, when I started my journey, I knew at some point I had to share my story. Not for me, so I can say, I was like, oh, look at me, I'm on stage and I wrote a book and none of that stuff. That's not important. I knew I had to share my story to let others know that, hey, you're not alone. Because I thought I was alone for the longest time, right? To let them know you're not alone. And it's like, yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And it's like at first I thought it's like, oh, I'm gonna do the public speaking and everything. I mean, I do that too, but to me it was more than that. And it was so funny when I decided to step away from everything that I thought I should do, when I stopped shitting all over myself. Um, it was so funny, nothing came into place that I thought that I had envisioned to happen, but I was being asked about my book. And I was like, "What are you talking about? I don't have a book. Maybe at some time, but I don't think I can write a book." I was like, "Who am I to think I can write a book?" Well, why not? Right? So I finally listened to the universe, well, the higher power, or God, whatever you want to call it. And I said, "Fine, you want me to write that book? Give it to me." And all I felt was like laughter. And I was like, "Okay, shut down, listen, and write." I said, "Okay." So I wrote my first book. And this is actually the very first copy, as you can see. Happiness Matters, Unleash Your Superpower in 7 Easy Steps. And in that, I share a lot of my story growing up. And I also share the steps I took to pull myself out from the dark, from the abyss back into the light. It wasn't always easy. It took some time, but it's like I share the steps in here. And it's if you just want to read it for the story, you can do that, but it's also a workbook with tips you can do and implement, but it's like I had to share my story. So somebody else, and since the book came out in 2018, I had a bunch of people come to me and they're like, "Oh my god, thank you so much. I needed to hear that. I really thought I was alone. And thank you for the tips that you share in there." Right? So, and I didn't know. I mean, I knew it would have an impact, but we don't never know who it would impact and what difference it can make. We just do it anyway because it feels right. So share your story, And then my dog had to share his story, and I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "What?" But it's important for him because he's a service dog. It was important for him for others to understand what it is to be a service dog, and that so his book is called "Mo the Service Dog" because every dog has a purpose, right? And he talks about being a service dog or some being pets and whatever. But it was important, so it was his story. It was his story that needed to be shared. And since then I have people come to me and like, "Oh my gosh, this is bad." I mean, they tell me, "Oh, this is adorable. Thank you." But I said, "Do you get the message in there?" And they're like, "Oh yeah. Oh yeah." And now they look at people with disabilities and their service dog in a whole different way, right? That was his purpose for his book, right? And when I say share your story, I'm not saying write a whole book. If that's what you're called to do, by all means, please do that. But what I'm asking for is your story to include in the next volume of Happiness Matters. You are not alone, right? Because somebody needs to hear it. And in the first edition, there are some stories in there that are heartbreaking, they're heart wrenching. Some make you laugh, some make you cry. I want all of those stories. I want your story. And I only need around 1,400 words. It's nothing. You can do that, right? Share your story. And just because you think it's nothing special, it may be not special to you, but it might make a world of difference for somebody else. Share your story. Please share your story with us so we can include it in one of the next volumes. So the deadline for the next one is September 15th, 2023. When you're watching this and it's way past, send your story anyway. Send it to story at mattersofperspective.com because your story needs to be heard. It's important. It can make a difference for one. If it's just one other person, if it makes a difference for one, it's worth it. It's worth sharing. It's worth sharing anyway. But share your story. It is so amazing. And it's therapeutic too, not just for the reader, but also for the writer. So for you. So anyway, that's it for today. Share your story. Story at mattersofperspective.com. And I will talk to you on Monday. You all have a great weekend and share your story. Bye.